welcome everyone, and thank you so much for coming tonight. My name's Lori Goldman, and I'm a board member with Things First Okanagan, and we'd like to acknowledge that we're living, working, and playing on the unceded ancestral lands of the Syilx Okanagan people, acknowledging that Indigenous peoples are the original stewards of the lands and life forms that we work to protect. We aim to learn from them and to be better allies in this undertaking. Tonight, we have two other board members with us, and that's Jim Beattie and Sue Kirschman, and they're going to be going over all of the aspects about this pipeline that we are going to be discussing, the Fortis BC Okanagan pipeline going in beside Penticton and Naramata. And I'll just share our agenda with you. Can everybody see that agenda? Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So tonight, Jim is going to be going over the Say No to More Gas campaign that we started in the spring when we found out about this pipeline. And he's going to give us a bit of information about what the pipeline actually entails. And also he'll be discussing what the BC Utilities Commission is and what their role is. And Sue is going to talk about why Things First Okanagan opposes the line. And then after that, I'm going to go through the process of how to submit a comment to the BC Utilities Commission. It's really quite simple, and hopefully we'll be able to get people to add their comments to the dozens of people who have already submitted a comment. And with that, I'll pass it over to Jim.
Well, thanks very much, Lori. And thank you all for joining us. I see so many names that I know. And so I am also aware of that many of you are quite active in the climate change movement and have probably are probably quite well informed about the pipelines that are being built. So some of the things I'll say you'll know, but I will be brief about my presentation so that we can get on to the important thing, which is really to register your comments with the British Columbia Utilities Commission. And the reason that we've chosen to do that is because, well, first let me start by saying that First Things First has been active in the Okanagan for about 7 or 8 years. We were actually started here in Naramata under the leadership of Fred Ritchie and a number of other people who got together and formed the group. And in the last 6 or 7 years, we've presented a number of symposia. We've brought in guest speakers. We've cooperated with other climate change groups in the Okanagan and further afield. I see Laura Sachs is on the call today. From Citizens Climate Alliance, and we've worked with her quite often. I see Wes Kemet. And so we've worked with a lot of people in the last number of years, and we're working to build a movement in the Okanagan and around the province where people will more and more be educated and speak out about the necessity for us to act diligently and quickly on climate change. So we have taken a different step by becoming engaged in the British Columbia Utilities Commission. Although we've been fairly political in the sense that we have worked with our municipalities and we have lobbied our MLAs and our federal representatives. And we've attempted to build bridges with all of these organizations, all these people, all these leaders. To take part in the British Columbia Utilities Commission is a different step. The British Columbia Utilities Commission makes rulings on the provision of power both electrical and gas and any other form of power that's being generated to the citizens of British Columbia, and has the responsibility to ensure that this power is being delivered in a safe manner. We have taken the position in our application to the British Columbia Utilities Commission that the delivery of safe power should be expanded to include whether the power itself that's being delivered is safe. And that's been our position. And Sue Kirschman and Cameron Bond, who you'll see is also on this call and was a board member up until just a few months ago, actually took the position that we have endorsed, that the public, or at least the responsibility of municipalities to deliver climate change and to reduce our carbon footprint is seriously jeopardized by the construction of more natural gas and oil infrastructure. And as Sue has said very cogently, quoting the United Nations leader Guterres, that it's immoral, really, to continue to build infrastructure at a time when we know that the science says that we need to reduce our reliance. I think I've said enough right now. I'm going to turn it over to Sue for her more of her elaboration on our undertaking with the BCUC.
Great, thanks, Jim, and hi, everybody. Nice to see you here tonight. I'm just going to share my screen here. And can everyone see my first slide there?
Yes.
Great, thanks. I just have to do one more little thing here. So I just thought I'd start with a little, little diagram here of where the pipeline goes. Sorry, I'm just trying to get my pointer working. One more second. There we go. There may be people on the call who don't know where the Penticton and Chute Lake are. So just briefly, it runs between, or it's proposed to run between Penticton, crossing Ellis Creek, Penticton Creek, and then along the Naramata Bench, where we have wine country with many wineries, up to 50 wineries. It would be visible along here up towards Chute Lake. Again, it crosses about 20 water courses, would cross 20 water courses and 3 watersheds. This area up here is also mature forest. We've had forest fires in Okanagan Mountain Park in this area and other areas around Penticton, but not in this region. So a pipeline in this area would also be prone or susceptible to wildfires if we were to have a wildfire up here. So that's just an overview.
Could I just say one thing, Sue?
Sure.
Just for clarity's sake, and I should have mentioned it at the beginning, that this is actually a twinning of an existing pipeline. So there is a pipeline that does go from Penticton to Chute Lake, and this twinning is to increase the capacity for Fortis to supply gas to Kelowna and Vernon. So I'm sorry I didn't allude to that earlier.
That's okay. I was going to touch base here.
Okay.
But yeah, this isn't a very good diagram and it's hard to see the twinning here. So I'm glad you pointed that out, Jim. But I just also wanted to mention that this is part of a much larger system. So the extra capacity, like Jim said, would be not necessarily to provide more capacity for new developments in Penticton, but also north in the valley. So for future growth in Kelowna and Vernon. This is where Fortis says they need the power for new developments in all of these areas. There are other power pipelines, these red lines here are part of the interior transmission system, which aren't really relevant to this conversation, but just to give you a snapshot of, where the power lines are in our area. And then they also are part of a bigger picture. There are pipelines throughout all of BC with carrying Fortis's natural gas. This slide is just a really quick recap of a step back where we are with the global picture, and just again showing that as the carbon dioxide emissions have increased since 1880, especially in the last several decades, the temperature correlates with that. And you can see it jumps around a bit, but it's gradually been rising at the same rate as the CO2 emissions. And of course, we're now at about 1.1 degrees warmer, and we're seeing the effects of that, starting to see the effects of that in our weird weather, heat domes, floods, and all the other awful weather that's been going on around the globe. Just looking at this little pie chart of greenhouse gas emissions, what I wanted to point out here is that while most of the emissions come from carbon dioxide, this portion right here is mainly from burning fossil fuels in our cars and in our homes for heating. This piece right here, methane, is also very important because natural gas is made up of methane, and methane is a very potent greenhouse gas, about 85 times as potent as carbon dioxide. And methane has been increasing worldwide as we increase the number of pipelines all over the world. And like any gas, methane tries to escape. It doesn't like being contained, and it will seek any gaps or cracks or where there are joints, for example, in a pipeline. And methane emissions that is leaking out of pipeline infrastructure is a significant amount. And so it's of concern. The more pipelines we build, the more methane leaks we will have. I think that was the only point I wanted to make there. Yeah. Well, I guess the other point would be that natural gas kind of is bad in two senses, because we burn it in our homes and it releases carbon dioxide. And then the infrastructure and the pipelines that carry it all over the province to our homes also are leaking methane. So it's bad on two fronts. Just a quick recap of the BC Clean BC targets. We're up here at about 65, megatons of CO2 equivalent. And by 2030, the goal is to reduce emissions by 40%. And by 2050, to reduce emissions down to net zero. And much of this reduction in emissions will take place at the community level. And in fact, communities are mandated to meet these same targets. So communities have created plans and they have specific actions that will reduce emissions. I'll just go to the next slide. In the Penticton Community Climate Action Plan, don't worry about the detail. I just wanted to point out that in 2018, 30% of the emissions in our community were from natural gas. And this next graph is even busier, sorry about that. But in this one, I wanted to point out that the emissions reduction targets are the same as the Clean BC targets. That is 30 or 40% reduction by 2030 and down to net zero by 2050. And one of the key actions in Penticton's Community Climate Action Plan is to eliminate fossil fuels from transportation and heating, which applies in this case. These are the key actions. But this is where the proposed pipeline conflicts with the Community Climate Action Plan. If new pipelines are built to service new developments, more homes will connect to natural gas and then emissions will go up. So how can communities reduce emissions if new pipelines are being approved and built, which is increasing emissions? The math just doesn't work. Just a quick look at the regional district of Okanagan's. One of their main actions is to encourage the use of alternate energy systems in new and existing buildings to reduce the community's collective reliance on fossil fuel energy sources, particularly for heating. So a similar goal to Penticton's. In this slide, I'll just start down here. The Kelowna Climate Action Plan has a goal to reduce 25% or 25% reduction by 2030. And this would mean natural gas usage would have to drop by 60% in homes and commercial buildings. I just wanted to talk a little bit about how the RDUS plans to meet its targets. One method is increasing the number of retrofits, home retrofits, which is important and why the governments are providing lots of rebates. But this action, connecting new buildings to clean energy for heating, is really the easiest way. It's like a low-hanging fruit, the easiest way to reduce emissions. And this is what First Things First is trying to convince local governments is the way to go. And in our Say No More to Gas campaign, we're talking primarily about preventing new buildings from being connected. We know retrofits can be expensive and difficult, and it makes way more sense to avoid hooking up homes to gas in the first place. So I'll just finish up with kind of a summary. I've thrown a lot of detail at you. Just some of the key points about the proposed Okanagan capacity upgrade pipeline. First of all, as I pointed out in a couple of cases there, it directly contradicts climate goals. Communities are mandated to reduce their emissions by 40% by 2030, et cetera. And building this pipeline will make that job impossible, or at least far more difficult. Another way to look at this is that communities have these plans and will be taking actions to reduce the use of natural gas, which actually means less gas will be used and the pipeline is not needed. So there are two different ways of looking at that issue. And just to end up, I've got the quote that Jim read out earlier from Antonio Guterres, warning us that investing in new fossil fuel infrastructure is moral and economic madness. And this is the message, as Jim said, that we will be bringing to the BCUC, that it really makes no sense to build more pipelines at a time when reducing emissions is so critical. And I'll stop sharing there, and I'll turn it over to Lori now.
Thanks so much, Sue. So what I'm going to do is, at this point, is I'm going to walk you through the submission page and to show you just how we would be tackling this next part. Certainly we can give you more information about the details of the pipeline. You can also look at it on our page, which is called Fortis Upgrade Info page. And you can read all about more details about what Sue went over a little bit. But I just want to show you, this is the login page the submission page. And this is on the BCUC Utilities Commission website. The link that I'm giving you is going to go directly to this page, so you don't have to do any searching here. When you look at the page, the top of it says that this is the, oh, sorry, that's the wrong page. Is it?
That's it. Oh, it's not the.
No, I don't know how that happened. I had it set up and now it's gone. Okay. Oh, technology is so frustrating.
One of the reasons that we're doing this tonight is just because of the problem that Lori is having right now. It is fairly complicated to get into the BCUC, and we did have people say they wanted to make a submission, and it is important when you make a submission to the BCUC that you do it yourself. Well, we cannot be the purveyors of your submission. So that's why we're doing this session tonight. And that's why Lori is going to provide you with the link to this exact page right here. And that page will make it very easy for you, even tonight, if you wished, to finish off your application to the BCUC and make your comments.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah.
Thank you for helping. So this is what you see at the beginning. It just says that they do want to hear. We encourage individuals, organizations, and groups to participate. So they do read all of the notes that we send in. And here it says very clearly that they will not be sharing your personal information, so that you know that your information you're putting in this page is protected. When they do post it, people will see your first initial and your last name, city and province. That's it. Your email address and your phone number are not public. All these asterisks here show you, of course, that is necessary, that you have to fill in before you submit. You go down, so you fill in your boxes here. Just choose BC. The problem that people have is with the preceding name, because it's hard to know which proceeding it is. There are so many proceedings that BC Utilities Commission has to look at and has to judge whether it is safe and, for us, for them to approve. Look at all of these procedures that they're dealing with. They don't usually get very many comments. And so when we are raising our voices about this, I think that we have more, a more powerful voice when we do it together. So we are looking for the FEI CPCN for the Okanagan Capacity Upgrade Project. And I'm going to be putting this into the chat, this name, so you don't have trouble finding it. And also it will be going in the email that you're going to get tomorrow with the link to this video. So you choose that. You go down to the next box and it says, are you currently registered as an intervener or interested party? You just choose no. And you go down here and there are rules and practice of procedure. So basically, don't be rude. Make your note simple and clear and respectful about why you think that any new fossil fuel is not a good idea for our safety, and why this proposal shouldn't be approved. According to, like the ideas that Sue has shared with us about the dangers of methane and what we know right now. COP27 is meeting in Egypt, and they are having discussions just about this. Increasing fossil fuel infrastructure is simply not the way to go. There's a part here, it says additional documents. If you would like to attach additional documents, upload them here. Ignore this. But when you go to submit a query, can you see this box that popped up?
Yes.
So it says no attachment selected. You are submitting this form with no attachments. Do you wish to continue? You just click send with no attachments and you're done. That's how easy it is. So it takes about 5 minutes. And we would like to know if people would like to, at this point, submit their letter right now while we are on here, and we can answer questions and help you with any questions that you have about filling in the form, I put the link into the chat, and you can click on it and go right to the web page and make sure that it works for you. And the proceeding name is going in the chat as well, so you'll be able to find it easily.
Now, Ganila has asked if we can comment more than once. I don't believe so. I think one
Well,
comment.
I think some people have commented more than once, but I'm not sure that it would have more impact if they do. But I know some people forgot that they commented, so they sent in another comment. Can you see the link in the, oh, actually, on this other page that I mistakenly went to, down at the very bottom, can you see this page with all of these letters?
Yes.
So down at the very bottom, which is the section E, that's D and E, these are the letters of comments. So it's way down at the bottom of this page. These are all the letters that we have already submitted and other people have submitted. And when you click on that, you're able to see what I wrote, but you don't see my email or my phone number. And these are all of the people around BC who have made comments in opposition. There are a couple of people who have supported it, but for the most part, these are the dozens of people in our area who have commented. And some of them are very small, just that we can't have any new fossil fuel infrastructure. Somebody is asking if there is a submission. We do have on that page that I showed on our website, the Fortis Upgrade Info page, we have some points that people could put into their submission, which I have seen that people have just sort of adapted these points into their letter. And that would work.
Yeah, because First Things First are interveners, we haven't made a group submission. Ours will be a different type of submission that we'll be presenting orally as well as a big written document.
So I've put the links and the information into the chat, and I'm wondering if people would like to do that right now. Tracy's asking if you can, Sue, if you can share the slide with the comment by Antonio Gutierrez.
Absolutely.
Becky is asking, Jim, when the final date for a submission is. When is the last date that we can comment?
I don't think there is a final date yet, and I'm not sure that there would be anything that would prevent a submission up until the day that they make their decision. Just so that you know, the hearing is in abeyance at this point. It was put on hold a number of months ago as the BCUC is in negotiation with other parties that are participating. So we're not sure when the hearings will actually begin or when we will be called to make our presentation. But I'm quite certain that it's not going to happen at least for a couple of months before it will be completed. So there's time, and I think, but the sooner the better. I mean, we want people to comment so that the BCUC is well aware that there are a significant number of people who are participating in this process and are objecting.
Somebody also asked Jim if this existing pipelines, any of these existing pipelines carry LNG and where the LNG is currently coming from. Have you any idea about that? Or Sue, do you know anything about LNG?
Well, I think as Sue has said, well, she hasn't said so tonight, but she has mentioned very often when discussing RNG that there is not going to be any separate pipeline.
Oh, no,
And
this is LNG.
yes, I know. But RNG, LNG are all the same in the sense that there will only be one pipeline. I have not read the Fortis submission in great detail, but I do know that at one point they say that if there are delays in the twinning of this pipeline, in order for them to meet what they say will be the demand, they would use liquid natural gas in order to fill the gas pipeline. So at some point, it's possible that through some process they could charge the line with liquid natural gas that would obviously expand into the pipeline and serve their needs. But I'm not a technical person on that, and I like I said, I read that in their document that was presented to the BCUC.
So I'll comment on that. I think liquid natural gas is a different beast altogether, and it's shipped through different types of pipelines and has to go to that Kitimat facility where they have those very strange tanks that they do something and put it on ships. I might be wrong, but I think that it is going to it is used in a different way. Somebody else might be able to speak to that. Yeah, that's right. Laura said that the LNG is liquefied and the pipeline is gas.
Yeah, but the thing is that it's liquefied only because it compresses it in order for it to be shipped more in a smaller form.
Mhm.
But when it's used, it has to be expanded. And if they put it into the pipeline, it would expand. That's my understanding. But again, I'm not a technical person on that.
Somebody asked if the goal of the pipeline upgrade is to supply residential developments in Kelowna. But we do have the Wiltsea development, which will be up almost 700 units, which is just east of Penticton. And then there's also a new development in Naramata planned. And then also it's possible that Chute Lake is planning a development, but I'm not sure about that. Does anybody, Sue or Jim, do you know more about the hookups?
On the Fortis website and in their application, it does emphasize Kelowna because that is one of the fastest growing areas in our region. It does say Central Okanagan, and I think it also mentions South Okanagan. But I think because Kelowna has much more room to expand, and there are a number of very large developments planned there, and I think that's where the focus is. It's more Kelowna Lake Country area. And it's to ensure they have enough capacity for existing customers if they're going to be hooking on new customers. That's my understanding of it anyway. There's another question about, yeah, Gunilla's already answered, Dawn. What does the R stand for in RNG? R is for renewable, and I say that in quotes because it's not really renewable. RNG is more commonly known, especially in Europe, and that as biomethane. It is, again, methane gas that comes from biological sources. It's been given the renewable natural term because I don't know why.
It's marketable, which is
Yeah.
what they're doing is they're making it palatable so that people think that it is a better product. And also They are having people pay for 5% renewable natural gas or 10% or 25 or 100%, which could increase your costs every year by, $400 or $1,000, but you're not getting renewable natural gas to your house. They can't do that. It's all mixed in together. So it's a seriously weird marketing tool to get people to actually subsidize them, in my opinion.
So Tracy, I just took that quote down. I hope that gave you enough time.
Elizabeth asks if the proposed twinning will go through or near the PIB reserve number 2, and if so, have they taken a stand on this? Anybody know?
Well, we do know that the Penticton Indian Band is an intervener in this process. And there are lands on this side of the lake that that they do have a territorial interest in.
And that's why it's paused at this point, is they're still doing some negotiations. I think they're addressing the PIB concerns. Is that correct? Not sure.
Not sure.
Adrian asks if there are any municipalities in the area looking to ban fossil fuels in new buildings. A number on southern Vancouver Island are. We're starting to look into this a bit, and we are trying to talk to local government and encourage them to, if they can't full out ban, which most communities don't have the legislative ability to do. Vancouver does, but they have their own charter. But there are creative ways of discouraging fossil fuels, and we found a few. One is in Squamish, where they have a restriction on the size of the home that you can build on a lot if you're going to be connecting to gas. So you can build a smaller house than you could otherwise build if you're not using gas. So that's the method they're using in Squamish, and there are a couple other, I can't remember them off the top of my head, but there are other creative ideas working with step codes. You can have a lower step code if you don't have gas. If you have gas, you have to go to a higher step code. So those are just a couple of examples that I've heard of.
Just with regards to the LNG, I'm looking at the Fortis website right now, and it says how our customers use LNG. And it says liquid natural gas is a lower carbon fuel compared to diesel that can be used for trucks, trains, and ships, or it can be converted back into natural gas for residential and commercial use. Fortis BC also uses liquid natural gas to supplement the lower mainland gas supply during periods of high demand. So it can go back into a so-called natural gas state if they are short natural gas that would be coming through their line.
Tracy asks if it's fracked. Yes. I think all LNG is fracked. Is that right? As far as we know.
As far as we know, yeah, I think pretty much all the natural gas moving around our province, or as far as I know, and I'm not an expert on this, but is coming from the northeast part of our province and is mostly obtained through fracking, which we all know is not good for the people or the environment.
So can I ask how many people have actually written a letter already to the BCUC, and how many of you will be taking the initiative to do that?
Thank you.
We can't see everybody, but are there any people that feel at this point that they don't feel comfortable writing a letter? And is there anything that we can say to help you with this? Good to see that, Wayne. Great, Kathy.
Wayne has made a comment that he'd like a more detailed map of the existing pipeline and the current routing, and does it follow the Fortis power line? I don't know if there's detail about that.
There is a power line that goes across the top of um, this bench that goes, along from Chute Lake, maybe from all the way from Kelowna. But I don't think that they're intricately linked. They kind of pass one another.
There is a video on the Fortis website with a little flyover of it. I don't know if you've seen that, Wayne. I have heard that that route isn't accurate, that it has moved though, so that's not all that helpful. But it gives an idea anyway of the terrain and that.
Well, it's great to see that so many of you are going to be writing letters. It's important to note that before you sign off tonight, or before we sign off, that you do save the chat. And I suppose most of you know how to do that. So Laura, you could explain that.
Sure. The links are in the chat, so you can just go to the three dots that are at the bottom. There's a little square thing and a little happy face, and then there are three dots. And when you click on that, it just says save chat, and then you have to find it. But it would, it's like a saved as Zoom on your downloads or on your computer somewhere. Mine goes into a file that it's made called Zoom. But I will be sending out a follow-up email tomorrow when we have the recording on the YouTube channel. And so we'll be sending you out a link and all the information about how to go to which web page to go to, and how to make your submission, and the name of the procedure, and all of that will be in the email to make it easier. And if you can forward it to friends and really spread this news, because I think Kainagata was saying that having 30 or 40 people submitting comments is really unusual. So if we can get up to 100 comments, that is actually shows that people have made the effort to comment on this project. This little 30-kilometer pipeline, our little campaign, could actually have big ripples, because if we are able to move the BCUC to really see this as an issue and they can't approve this, it may have some really, profound effect on the expansion of fossil fuels, and expansion of fossil fuel use in BC. And in 2020, Fortis estimated the cost for this 30 kilometers at $270 million. Well, that's, almost 3 years ago now. That's going to be way more. So maybe if it's up to $500 million, think about all of the renewable energy generation that they could be creating with that amount of money. All of Penticton could be solarized, putting electricity into the grid, and we could have batteries as backup so that the whole city could be resilient. Naramata could have its own grid with a backup system, so that when we get a climate event, we don't have problems like that community in Florida that withstood the hurricane, because they built hurricane buildings, they built away from the water, and they built with all solarized, so they didn't lose any of their power, they didn't lose any of their solar installation. So we really have an opportunity, I think, to move the needle and to make a big difference with our little voices. And so please share this information with your friends and family and get them to do this 5-minute little baby letter.
Just to expand on that a little bit, I mean, this is a small project relative to what Fortis is doing all around the province. In the Lower Mainland, they are also planning on building more pipelines to increase their capacity. So I've talked to some people in the Fraser Valley who are well aware of the plans that Fortis has in that area. So stopping it here is something that would be very, very significant.
So Laura has said, has asked if it would be, if submissions from outside the Okanagan, would they be less effective? And I would guess no. I think it's effective for anyone from anywhere to say that they're concerned about, pipelines in general. I think it would be effective. Someone has also asked if there is a physical address to send a letter if you don't have an email address or computer. So Lori, if we can include that tomorrow. I'm sure
Yes,
there would be a physical address.
there is.
And Brita also asked, sorry, I'm just jumping back up to a couple of questions. What energy sources can new developments in these areas access instead of gas? And this is where, heat pumps with electricity. I know up in Kelowna, they have a company called Geotility that does geothermal for like entire developments, and they run it like a utility, charging a monthly fee, just like Fortis or BC Hydro do. And then, of course, supplementing those with solar or perhaps even wind. So, yeah, electricity would be the main alternative.
Yeah, and British Columbia does and has the capacity to build or to have clean hydropower. And if Site C is going to be used to support the fracking, and we can stop the development of LNG, then we do have that capacity that we can draw on. Ultimately, we will have to build grids that use different technologies. But right now, we have electric power, which is clean, and that's what should be used. And we should build our capacity to generate more electricity as time goes on, as more cars are becoming electric, and as more homes are electrified. I should make one point too. We have been chastised by some people who think that we are asking people to take gas out of their homes as part of this no gas campaign. That's not our intention at this time. We think that, if you have gas, okay, you've got it. At this point, we're saying no new homes should be built. But if you have gas and you have to go through the cost of taking it out and putting in electrical, that's not something that should be mandated until a certain point down the road when governments act in that way.
Annette,
Somebody had their hand up a little while ago. I'm sorry, I just didn't get to you. Grace.
Kramer, yeah.
Yeah, Grace, would you like to unmute and just
Yes, I have grave concerns. You're saying 3 watersheds, 20 water streams. What are our local communities who, for their water? This is very serious. If they're going up there with what area are they putting those pipes through? Because that means they have to have big equipment up there, and they're crossing streams, which is creating sediment for our water. And then no one's responsible except the communities have to pay for all the sediment and all the damage that's done up there. What is the Valley Water Board saying about this? I mean, this is really serious.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my question. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just
They
very concerned.
They do have to do a thorough. They have to do an environmental assessment. So they have had, I assume, an independent body do an environmental assessment. We are just not entirely sure who reviews that assessment. I know one of our other board members, Margaret, was looking at that, and I don't remember what the outcome of it was.
If they're following the same rules as the forestry, then it's going to be overlooked. We have a serious problem in the valley when it comes to the water issue. And that's why we're having all the droughts with all the the clear cutting that's happening up in those hills where the pipe is going to go through. It's in your area and it's in the Vernon area. All the watersheds are being hit by the forestry because they can't find any other lumber, and they're ruining our water, and they're creating droughts. And then we have the slides and the floods. It's not a good picture.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
So
that's a-
thank you very much for listening.
Yeah, very, very good point, Grace. Thank you.
And this pipeline also will be, when they do a pipeline, it's like not just the pipeline, it's quite wide, it's quite broad, and 30 kilometers is a lot of destruction from side to side. So it's not just 18 inches, it's quite a big area that's going to be destroyed. And what they say is, we're going to put it back. We're going to restore it. But until that time, what about the habitat, and what about the water, and what about everything? It's very frightening when we think about it being so close to our communities and to our wineries, and a lot of they had to work with property owners to get them to give them the ability to go through their property, and some people refused. But that's not easy to refuse a big company like Fortis. Yeah, it's quite a big issue, little issue with a lot of big impact. Cameron says Fortis produced a page to better understand their perspective. There's a video of the route. Yeah, so you can, if you save the chat, you can get a link to that route. We're coming up to the hour, and I think that unless there are any other questions that we haven't addressed, we would say thank you so much for sharing your voice and listening to our concerns about this very important pipeline.
Cameron, I see, has his hand up. So Cameron, if you just like to unmute yourself.
Yeah, thanks. And I think Sue and Jim and Chloe, you guys did a great job explaining it. It's a complex issue, like you said. I think the big push is that local governments, when they look at where their emissions are in their communities, see natural gas as being a huge part of it. And it's one where if you have a heat pump, you can save money. So if you have an induction stove, over time, they're both expensive, you can save money. So when new homes are being built and they're getting gas hooked up, it's going to be a huge cost for them to transition away from gas. Whereas if their electricity is already in there in terms of induction stoves or heat pumps or whatever else they're going to use, then they can start saving money from day one. It's just the Fortis group doesn't control electricity in the Kelowna and Vernon area. So they're really keen to make some money off gas up there because they can see the growth potential. And it's frustrating because those communities in their climate action plans have said, no, we don't want to do this. The problem now is political will, and having those politicians saying, hey, we're not going to allow new developments to sign up to gas. And it's difficult for them because it's people like gas. A lot of people are really keen on gas because they think it's better. And then on the renewable natural gas, we do have a landfill in the Okanagan, Glenmore landfill, that produces what they call renewable natural gas. But I've looked at their numbers. They're collecting maybe 60% of the methane they produce. So the other 40% is either escaped or into the atmosphere. And when you look at the climate, like tonnage, the CO2 equivalents from the methane they're not capturing, it's way more than the actual tonnage of methane that they're creating. So this renewable natural gas, there might be ways to get it out in a cleaner way, but these landfill projects are not the way to get renewable natural gas. And I was just in the city of Victoria, and now they've moved away from creating electricity with their gas, and they're moving that towards putting into the pipeline. So Fortis is really keen, and they're paying a lot of money to get this gas out. But I think talking about like the Kelowna area, the central Okanagan area, they intentionally place food waste into their landfill to produce biogas.
Mhm.
And that's not normal. And that's because they need to make money from that gas. And I think there's some more we could talk about on this issue. So thanks.
Yeah, we could have a whole session on renewable natural gas and other types of renewable gas like blue and green, or not green, blue and purple hydrogen that are created from natural gas, but another day. I'm just seeing if there's any other last questions.
Oh, Ganilla. Ganilla says that she cooked over a gas for 30 years and switched to electric and found her asthma improved. I mean, that's what people are finding, is that the gas fumes from a gas range, the methane fumes, it's nitrogen oxide, I think. It's really harmful for us. I got a small induction range myself, and I have found it to be really, really efficient and useful, and uses very little electricity. And, you know, we really just have to keep informing people that there are better ways to do this, and that we have to move quicker than slower on this.
Yeah.
Our next deep dive will be at the end of this month. I think it's November 24th, and it's going to be about solar. And the person who is presenting was at our Clean Energy Expo and was so popular that we asked him to come back and speak to our deep dive, and he agreed. So we're looking forward to hearing from him. And I hope that you all have signed on to our e-newsletter. New people who are from Naramata, please join us because your membership really helps, and having you join us always makes things easier for us to spread the word about how we can and must do better.
I see Brita has her hand up. Brita, you're.
Yeah. My question is, I actually would just like a reminder of the power structure, like municipal governments, provincial government, BCUC, like where does it fit in? And Fortis, like, you know, like if this is a watchdog, right? Basically, you were saying originally like that, but who appoints that watchdog? And like, I just am interested in the function. Like, then is it the government that actually gives the go ahead to Fortis, or is it the BCUC itself that just says go ahead or don't go ahead? Do you know what I mean? Like, what is the structure, the power structure here between the governments and this institution, you know, this commission? So yeah.
Well, I could say one thing about it. If you think back to the Site C situation, the BCUC did not make a categorical decision about it. They said that there were pros and there were cons.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, the provincial government made the decision. And I think that's true in every situation. The government would not give up their responsibility for making those decisions, but they are a kind of an arm's length government body appointed by the government. And generally speaking, I think their legitimacy has been reinforced over the years because the decisions that they make generally stand. But at the end of the day, the government has the responsibility to say yes or no.
Mm-hmm. And so you know, our regional district and our city of Penticton, et cetera, they don't have any jurisdiction. It's the provincial government, like whatever comes of this gas, this 30 kilometers, it's a provincial government. The buck stops there, basically. Is that right?
Yes. And First Things First attempted to get the municipality, or at least the regional district, which represents all the municipalities in the Okanagan, or in South Okanagan. We did make an effort to have them speak out against it, to say that they didn't approve of it, but they would be no different than another intervener, but not of the status of First Things First, much higher than First Things First.
Yeah.
The equivalent of a very large group of people saying, that they're opposed to it, and they would have a greater impact. But at the end of the day, they don't have the power to say no.
They do have to, for certain things, I think they do have to give permits. So I think they do have a little more sway depending on what they specifically need the permits for.
Mhm.
And we do know that Fortis has directly approached and done presentations about their projects to the city and to the regional district to try and get letters of support. Other cities like Kelowna actually provided a letter of support that was, I think, for renewable natural gas, not for the specific project, but it was another BCUC proceeding that Fortis was involved in. So they can get letters of support from cities which do carry weight, probably more weight. Yeah, it's a bit complex, we're finding.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Well, I think that's it. And I want to say again, thank you very much to everyone for coming tonight and for participating and for spreading the word.